Thank you, Commissioner. I really appreciate that introduction. So what I thought I'd do today is talk about a couple of things. First of all, I've been in this position for 7 months. Y'all hear me over there? Is this good in the back? So 7 months, you might think, what is a real estate guy who has been involved in a lot of different kinds of projects around our region, doing at the port? I don't have maritime experience or background. And so in the last 7 months, I've had a massive education process about this industry, about the business. And so I thought I'd give you a little bit of background about me to start with and kind of the way I sort of think about the world and how I'm approaching port issues and the regional economic development. Because I think it's important to understand where people are coming from. So with that said, I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit of the past of the port, kind of where we are today and where we need to go in the future. Because I think it is important to look at kind of history, talk about where we are today, and then where we're going in the future. And I know you've had some really great panels today on the Panama Canal and the widening of that and all the transit that it's creating and value creating for our region and other regions around the country. So just a little background about me. I came to Houston in 1976, 43 years ago, as a 21-year-old, kind of bright-eyed, want to try to figure out the world guy. And I graduated from Oregon State University. I didn't come from, so my family wasn't from here. My family is from the West Coast and from Dallas. And so my father actually started a business here, and the best thing that happened for him and me was that he went broke really fast. And so I was thrown into the job market without a job and got a job at a development company that built Greenway Plaza and Allen Center downtown. And so I was involved in Houston real estate when the first 5 years was the best real estate market on earth because energy prices had started going up dramatically as a result of the oil embargo in 1974. I got here and thought, wow, this is a great place. It's the most diverse city in America. It's got just all kinds of opportunity for people who work hard, who have great ideas, who focus on doing the right thing for the community. And I think Camden and I would be a poster company and poster person for success in Houston because we started a company with no capital, with 2 people, as part of our development company, and today Camden's a $13.5 billion publicly traded company in New York Stock Exchange with 1,800 employees, about $1 billion under construction around the country, and was all funded by local. We started out as a small business and became a big business because we were supported by local people funding our business at the time, and then we ultimately went to Wall Street and got capital funded there. And so over the years, for the last 25 years, I've been involved in public activity. My first sort of public job was I was one of the first board members of the Harris County Houston Sports Authority. Bud Adams, who owned the Oilers, was kind of a friend of mine, and I tried to help him keep the Oilers here, but that didn't work out so well. So we ended up having to build stadiums to be able to bring the Texans, and I was involved in all 3 stadiums, bringing the Texans, keeping the Rockets here, and the Astros here. As Commissioner Garcia said, after that I got involved in Houston First. Houston First runs the George R. Brown Convention Center, the Wortham Theater, and between the Sports Authority and Houston First, our groups were involved in $3 billion worth of public investment that were public-private partnerships. And after the Houston First gig, Bob McNair called me and asked me to pitch to the owners why they should come back for Super Bowl 51 in 2017. I did that, and that was kind of fun with a great team. And after that, I was kind of a free agent, if you want to call it that, from a football perspective. And I got a call the week before Christmas, and I called to a meeting with our new county government, which was Commissioner Garcia and the county judge, Lena Hidalgo, and Rodney Ellis, and the mayor. And they asked me if I would be interested in getting involved in the port. And I was like, what? The port? Are you kidding me? I know about the port. I've always sold the port as one of the major economic engines of Houston, but I didn't have any real desire to get involved in the port. They recruited me, I think, for the central reason, and Commissioner, you can verify this at the table, was that they knew that the port had some major things that needed to happen, which were major capital investments, the deepening and widening. They knew that they needed sort of a new kind of public partnership person that could actually navigate that opportunity. And so they recruited me, and I accepted the position because it was an amazing opportunity for me to continue giving back to the community and being involved in regional prosperity. So that's me. Now let's talk about the port. All right, so when you think about the port, I'm gonna describe what the Port Authority is, okay? And that I think it's really important because a lot of people don't get what the Port Authority is. So first of all, the Port Authority is about, its singular mission is creating jobs for our people in our region. It's all about job creation. The port is, when you take all of the complication about who does what to who and all that, it's really about quality of life and providing jobs for people in our region, period, end of story. Now, the Port of Houston, some people get confused between the port is a big group. The Port Authority, it has two main roles. One, we are the non-federal sponsor of the channel. So what does that mean? The federal government owns the channel. The federal government controls the channel through the Coast Guard and the Corps of Engineers. It's not owned by the state, not owned by the local government. It's the federal government. The federal government controls all waterways in America around the coast and through rivers and controls them through the Coast Guard and the Corps of Engineers. The Port Authority is the entity that is a non-federal local sponsor. So what we have to do is partner with the Corps of Engineers to deepen and widen or to continue to maintain, and we're that entity that connects with the federal government, and that's one of our formal jobs. The second thing the Port Authority does is we manage the 8 public docks that the port has. And those public docks, anybody can come to the public docks. You just have a schedule of time. You can drop off break bulk or a container ship or whatever. And so we manage those docks. And that's all we do, okay? The Coast Guard controls ingress, egress. There's an issue with the port, it's the Coast Guard. If something has to be constructed in the port, it's the Corps of Engineers with supplemental from the Port Authority. We do have to fund some of the Corps of Engineer projects as a result of our federal sponsorship. So that's I think a really interesting piece of the equation that I learned that I didn't realize. I thought the port controlled the port. The Port Authority controlled everything in the port, but they actually do not. The Coast Guard controls. Okay, so one of the reasons that I took this job was because it was so important for the region. And one of the things when I started doing my due diligence on what was the port, I figured out the two things that it did. And then what I was really amazed by was the people at the port. I'm talking about the Port Authority staff, 700 employees that are committed to creating value for the community, that are committed to create jobs and to make sure that our regional prosperity is driven by everything that happens around the port. The other thing I found that was really important for me was the port was incredibly strong financially. The 8 public docks, the port has invested a massive amount of money in those docks, and the container business creates massive cash flow for the port, which is able then to reinvest that cash flow into the improvements into the channel to enhance the ability for people to use the channel, even though those funds come from the port. So with that said, I turned around and said, you know what? They have capital, they have great people, and then when you start looking at the other folks that are involved, all the 200 private terminals and docks in the port that are employing stevedores and the ILA and all kinds of other employees and activities that are going on. It's like amazing the amount of activity that's going on at the port, an amazing opportunity to keep that going forward. When you think about, let's talk about the history. Cotton barges in 4 feet of water. That's the history of the port when you start thinking about it. It started out as a very, very shallow, very hard to get into and all that. And we as a region started creating value long time ago when you think about just the history of the port. Today, it's the nation's busiest waterway. We have 9,000 inbound ships, and they move around inside the port, inside the deep channel, and that totals around 20,000 ship movements through the channel. Add on top of that the barge fleet that we have, and now you're talking about 200,000 barge movements inside the channel. So you're talking about the busiest channel in America. If you take Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and New York, New Jersey, you combine them together, Port of Houston is still the busiest waterway, even when you combine all those big ports together. So it is the major port in America when you think about it from that perspective. This is a great slide. It shows the channel here 50 years ago and what was around it. And today, you can see it's grown a little, just slightly. And 50 years is 7 years before I came here. So that's not that long ago when you think about it. But if you look at the 200 private and public terminals, we're number one in international trade, number one Gulf container port, project cargo port, seal port. The big thing that differentiates Houston from the rest of the ports in Texas is we have this 500 million barrel of liquid capacity at our port or in and around our port. The little circle there that you see, or the yellow spot on the bottom of this slide, that is 20 million barrels, and that is the largest amount of storage of any other Texas port. I'm not going to say who it is because we don't want to talk about other ports, but that's when you start thinking about the port and the activity at our port. The reason it's going to grow and continue to be a job generator for us over a long period of time is this storage capacity that we have, the pipelines coming in. The Houston port it is a market, and when people want to sell their commodity, whatever it is, they're going to bring it to this port because it's a marketplace. When you think about economic impacts, so $800 billion economic impact for the U.S., 3.2 million jobs, $339 billion in Texas. By the way, that accounts for almost 21% of the Texas GDP is related to the Houston Ship Channel. 1.3 million jobs. The tax revenue that's generated is about $5.4 billion in Texas and about $34 billion in the U.S. So this is not an insignificant program here for the channel in terms of generating jobs long term for Americans. It's very diverse when you think about it. This slide here shows the tonnage. The red is liquid bulk, which would be petrochemical products. The blue is containerized ships, and then the others are other diversified dry bulk, general cargo. When you think about the economic impact, which is interesting, so when you look at this slide, it's primarily energy. But when you look at the last slide, that $339 billion of economic activity, 51% of it is driven by cargo and break bulk activity, and 49% is energy. And the reason that these are different is because we're exporting Teslas out of the Port of Houston. Did you all know that? Teslas. 3,300 containers every year are going out. They make the Tesla in San Francisco or in California. They put it on a truck or on a train, and they bring it in a container to the Port of Houston, and it gets exported to Europe and sold in Europe. So most people don't realize that Houston's an exporter of Teslas. Lots of plastic resins, all the byproducts that are being made out of the petrochemical business, big time ability to grow that business as well. So when you think about the complex ecosystem that we have, from chemical manufacturing, freight logistics, liquid storages, containers, and also the community at the same time. You have to balance all these interests together and make sure that we as a group are making sure that we focus on not only just the container business and the energy business and the exports and imports, but also the communities that live in around the channel. When you think about growth, just to give you a sense in containers, since 2015, our container business has increased 50%. We think that over the next 20 years, with the increase in population, million new people by 2030, that our container business will double again, or probably more than that over the next 10 or 15 years. When you think about energy, crude exports are way up big time, primarily as a result of fracking and what's going on in our energy complex in America. Containers, we're getting about 3 million TEUs today, and they're about balanced pretty well on imports and exports, about 1.5 million going both ways. Propane exports, resin exports are all growing. Houston today is the #1 exporter of natural gas liquids in the world. And when you think about what's happening in the future we're going to continue to grow all these businesses, and we need to make sure that we are ready, willing, and able to make the capital investments that are required to keep this growth going. When you look at manufacturing driving our exports, we're doing a massive good job of manufacturing. Actually, in the paper today was an interesting article that said that Houston used to be about 9% of our economy was manufacturing. Now it's 17% of our economy in this region is manufacturing. So we're actually growing that manufacturing base, not only gas processing, LNG projects, petrochemical projects, refinery projects, just a lot of different growth drivers that are pushing us there. When you look at polyethylene, for example, all ports in America is the black line, and Port Houston is the red line. So we are a substantial portion of all polyethylene export growth in the country. Same thing on container. I talked about containers a second ago. But when you look at it's kind of a busy slide, but the sort of dark line is exports, and the light colored one is imports. And we have a pretty good balance between imports and exports. And remember, imports are all about everything we use. 80% of all products come through a container. That's where you get them. They're coming into a container, and then they're being sent out to the retail areas, and then we're using those products. And the exports are generally resins and Teslas and other things like that we're manufacturing here. When you think about the Port Authority, we've spent $1 billion in CapEx. We have $1 billion we have about $2.5 billion of assets now, and about $1 billion of CapEx phasing plan to make sure that we can focus on that growth. And that's really a critical part of the equation. As you grow, you need more space, you need more freight logistics, you need freight mobility. We need to make sure that we're making those investments so that we can continue that growth prospect. This is a great one. It's pretty simple. No channel, no port, no cargo, no commerce, no jobs. When you get down to it, this is about jobs. It's about quality of life for Houstonians. And I will guarantee you that if you don't have a job, or your kids don't have a job, or your grandkids don't have a job, their quality of life is probably not very good. And maybe yours, because they're probably living with you. And so we need to make sure that we keep producing jobs for our folks. This gives you a sense of, I'm going to talk a lot about channel widening in a minute. When you look at this chart, the purple line is the depth of the channel from 1920 to today, which is 45 feet. The red line is the population of Texas. The blue line is the Port of Houston cargo, and the black line is containers, TEUs. So when you look at those lines, we have to have a deeper port to keep those lines going up and high to the right. And that's what, when you just make it really simple, we need to make sure that the channel continues to be a viable job creator in the future. When you think about energy, this is a kind of a busy slide, but it basically just shows the energy production, fracking in America, and you can see it's pretty much Midwest through Texas. We have more energy than ever. Just to put it in perspective, in the 70s when I was in college, we were producing 10 million barrels a day. And then we dropped down to about 4 million barrels a day because we were buying foreign oil. Today we're producing 12 million barrels a day, going higher than that. So we're pretty much energy independent in America. But the interesting thing is American demand is sort of flat to going down because of energy efficiencies for cars and the things that we're doing to create a better environment for America. So every incremental hydrocarbon that comes out of the ground has to be processed and exported. And that's going through Houston, Texas. When you look at the key to getting the products that we have to export out is we have to have a wider channel. We have to have two-way traffic. Two-way traffic is key. And remember, we have 530 feet in the channel right now, in the Bay Reach part of the channel. And there are lots of instances where we have to have one-way traffic because of requirements with wide beams and what have you. So in order to make sure that we have this long-term economic engine that keeps humming and keeps creating jobs, we have to have two-way traffic long-term in the channel. So our proposed improvements in the channel are listed here. There you have a card, by the way, on your tables, and also a pamphlet that will show this and go into more details. But we basically have 6 segments that are important to the deepening and widening project. And you can also go online at www.widenhoustonshipchannel.com and we'll get details on all these issues and points here. The channel is not just about commerce. A wider channel is a safer channel. The communities that are in and around the channel need to be protected from an environmental perspective and from a human life perspective, and a wider channel is a safer channel. We had 9 accidents or crashes, whatever you want to call them, since 2015. We need to prevent them. We need to have 0 crashes. We need to make sure we protect the environment, protect our communities in and around the channel, and a deeper channel is a safer channel and does that. The Port Authority is involved in the safety and security aspect. We serve as a partner with the Coast Guard and the other folks that are helping with security and safety in the channel. We need to work together as a team, and this is about getting industry together, and this is energy, this is midstream, this is producers, this is container businesses, bulk cargo players need to come together and help us with this project. And we all need to be on the same page, down the same direction, to make sure that we're all singing out of the same hymn book, so to speak, when we start talking about this channel improvement. Corps of Engineers is a huge partner. We're really excited about working with them on this project. There's kind of three things to think about when you think about the deepening and widening project. The first is the feasibility. In 2015, we started a 4-year feasibility study program with the Corps of Engineers, $10.6 million investment, paid for half by the Port Authority and half by the Corps of Engineers. That feasibility study has been completed and is in review, and we're hoping to have that finished and signed by the chief engineer by probably the end of the first quarter or the middle of the second quarter of next year. We have to figure out the financing aspect of it. I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail in a second. And then we have to have advocacy. Advocacy is about making sure that our elected officials understand that this is a high priority project and we need to get it done sooner rather than later. And here's when you start talking about how long would it take and what the federal process is. This chart shows BAU, which is business as usual. And business as usual, when you're dealing with the federal government and a federal project, takes a long time. If we just went down the trail today the way that you would have to normally in a federal process, we would have a channel by 2030 or 2035. And we can't wait. Our people can't wait, our environment can't wait, the safety can't wait, so we have to figure out a way to accelerate it. We figured that out, and we think we have a pathway that would get our channel completed by 2025, 2026, much faster than the normal process. And what drives that is industry participation together. It's being on the same page, being advocates for the channel, and moving forward all together. It all takes, when you think about it, money. So the project cost is $1 billion, and when you think about the $339 billion of economic impact, the $5.4 billion of taxes that are driven from the channel, $1 billion is not a lot of money when it comes to infrastructure investment. And we have to make that investment. The way to accelerate is for Houston to have a plan that doesn't rely on federal funding. So we have to self-help, which means federal funding is what causes the most of the delays in terms of getting the channel done. So we need industry to participate, we need the Port Authority to participate, and we need to have the federal government dollars be smaller than normal. I think one of our industry partners made this comment the other day that we need a Jesse Jones moment. In the early 1900s, Jesse Jones was a very important businessman here in Houston, and they needed to deepen the channel at that point. It cost $5,750,000 to do that project, and they brought $2,750,000 to the federal government and said, we'll pay for half, you pay for half, and that channel widening got done very quickly. And Jesse Jones, it took him 1 day in downtown Houston to raise that money. So we need a Jesse Jones moment. We need industry to step up and participate. The Port Authority has their capital already because of the great business that they have done with the container business. So we think we have a plan to fund this, and that's one of the big tickets of getting it done early. The advocacy is all about making sure when you're talking to your congressmen or your senators or your other elected officials, they understand the importance of widening the channel and accelerating the process so that we can, in fact, have a safer, more environmentally correct or environmentally enhanced channel by making sure that we don't have spills and things like that, and that we can continue to add jobs and continue to ride this growth wave up the curve on both sort of the energy and the container business and bulk cargo business. So it's really about everyone in this room understanding what the talking points are and talking to the right people and continue to have that conversation. We're going to Washington, D.C. tonight and have advocacy meetings tomorrow with the White House, with Commerce Department, with the Assistant Secretary of the Army, and with a number of political leaders in the Congress, because we do have to get congressional approval, which we hope to get in 2020, and then after that, it's a financing project and then a construction project. So, with that said, I'm really excited about being here. We have an incredible opportunity to create a lot of value for the future and to create more jobs for all of the people that need jobs, and I really appreciate your support. I think we're going to do Q&A now, so if you all have I guess you're texting questions in from the last few sessions, so I appreciate your attention, and let's deepen and widen the port. Thanks. Okay, so let's see here. What is the greatest concern to operations of the ship channel? Weather, Harvey, or security, terrorism, drones? I would have to say weather has been really one of the big issues. I think the Coast Guard and Homeland and our port security do a really good job on making the port safe. But some of those are wild cards, that you can never deal with. Decision of closing the ship channel, protesters hung from okay, so that's an interesting one, right? So the protesters last Thursday, they did shut down the upper part of the ship channel for pretty much 6 a.m. to 4:30 or 5, and the challenge with that is that, number one, it's all about safety. We want people to be safe. And the challenge with protesters is, number one, they're putting themselves at risk, but they also put our first responders at risk. We had our police, the port police, plus the Coast Guard, plus Sheriff, Harris County Sheriffs, all put at risk, fire boats that were sitting underneath the bridge. And so the most important thing is public safety of the protesters and our first responders. And I think they did a really good job of getting the protesters out of the situation by 4:30 or 5 o'clock that day. But rushing in and trying to organize getting the protesters out really fast just puts people in peril and in danger, and we're just not going to do that. Let's see. What is a greater concern? We already did that one. Is any other questions? What about protecting our infrastructure in the future? So protection of the infrastructure is really important, and we have groups that are focused on those issues all the time. And so it's just a constant vigilant effort from all the different responders, and we just have to keep working at it. So how much money has been raised for the ship channel rework? So typically the Port Authority would pay 35% of the cost, and the federal government would pay 65%. And so that's probably going to flip pretty dramatically. So we're going to have to pay a lot more, and they're going to pay a lot less. I still think we're going to have government funding, some government funding, but not as much as the 65-35. We are negotiating with industry right now. We've had several offers back and forth about how to do it, how to contribute capital in some fashion. The great thing about the Port Authority is that we have the ability to use revenue bonds to fund our share, and it's just a matter of selling revenue bonds based on our current cash flow. And so the Port Authority already has its money, and ultimately we just have to sell revenue bonds or do some other financing mechanism. The key issue is going to get the industry. How do we get the industry to contribute, and what makes sense for them? Let's see. We have. Is there a shortage of dredge material placement areas? The answer is no. We have dredge material. They're all identified in our 4-year plan or 4-year study. Has where the dredge material goes and what have you. So we don't have a dredge material placement area problem. Anything else? Let's see here. Looks like that's it. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Let's deepen and widen the channel.